With the Norse saga for God of War Ragnarok reaching its conclusion, the biggest question on the horizon is, now what? Atreus is gone, Kratos and friends are left behind to clean all the mess, and there is a subtle cliffhanger that this may not be the last time we see our heroes. I mean, the game has sold very well, so really the question here is, what is the next step for the God of War series? I am Angel for the B-side and welcome to another explainer video for God of War Ragnarok. If you're a PlayStation fan, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you can watch more content for this and many of your favorite PlayStation IPs like God of War, Horizon, The Last of Us, and more in the near future. But without further ado, let's jump into my theories for the next game of the God of War saga. By the end of God of War Ragnarok, Santa Monica Studio has laid down, in my opinion, two different paths for the God of War series to go forward. The first one, probably the most obvious one, is to continue the story of Kratos against a new Pantheon. We'll talk about that in a moment. But the second one, the one that I think is highly probable that we will get in the near future, is what gets me very excited: the follow-up to the story of Atreus. During the closing scene for Atreus in Ragnarok, he explains to Kratos his quest to look for other giants. Angrboda has already handed him the rest of the giant marbles while they were visiting the Valley of the Fallen in Jotunheim, but Atreus tells Kratos that he knows where to find the rest of them. The starting point would be, of course, inside all of the shrine Angrboda's mom has painted, aka all the shrines we visited in the first God of War, as we can see Atreus finding the hidden marbles. Atreus confirmed early in the game that he has already visited some of them when he shows Kratos one of the giant marbles. He mentions he has acquired the ones in the realm of Midgard, but we can also see a quick sketch of Yggdrasil, the world tree, with marks on 3 of the 9 realms: Midgard, Jotunheim, and Alfheim. I don't know if these represent other places he intended to visit, but he finally decided to ignore them because, at the time, he couldn't travel between the realms again. If I could make a guess on these 3 realms, it would be that Jotunheim had no shrine except for the giant mural in the room. Alfheim must have been considered too dangerous given the war between the Dark and the Light Elves, and Midgard is fully explored by now. So that means he has still other 6 realms to visit. Well, 5 if we consider Asgard has been destroyed: Vanaheim, Svartalfheim, Niflheim, Helheim, and Muspelheim. So the next game in the God of War series would be a sort of a spin-off game, more or less like Uncharted Legacy or Miles Morales, where we accompany Atreus in his search for all the giant marbles. And even when this sounds fantastic on its own, there's another loose end that could be tied to this new release that is also hinted at during the endgame of Ragnarok while exploring Midgard, and that is the connection between Jormungandr, the World Serpent, and Atreus. How they met and how Jormungandr eventually ended up in the Lake of the Nine. Even Sony Santa Monica Studios' own Cory Balrog has teased this in a tweet published back on November 17, 2022. Finally, the last important detail that could be included in this new Atreus game would be the path to try to reconcile with Sindri. The relationship has basically vanished after Brock's death and has probably gotten even worse since he wasn't at his funeral, but I'm pretty sure there's a way for them to move ahead as friends again, not without a very deep rite of passage for both, which could possibly be the emotional drive that leads the plot in this spin-off. On one side, we have Atreus, apologizing for involving the Dwarven brothers in a struggle that Sindri never wanted and literally raided the peace of his home, and on the other, Sindri, struggling to finally overcome the guilt and grief of reviving his brother to then lose him again. So, if everything points in the right direction, we could be hearing about Atreus sooner than we thought, at least before Kratos departs for his new journey against the new Pantheon. Let's talk about that. I'm pretty sure there must be like 1,000 different Reddit posts with crazy theories about the next Pantheon Kratos is going against, but I wanted to give you a different perspective on why this is such a difficult crossroads for Sony Santa Monica Studios. After we finish all of the content in Ragnarok, we are left with Kratos basically in the beginning of his path as the new All-Father of the 8 Realms, as his shrine foretold. If you need a deeper dive for the ending of the game, be sure to check out my other video in the playlist at the end of this one. But the most meaningful thing about our hero is the immense character development Kratos has achieved after the Norse saga. We see in front of us a wiser, calmer, and definitely more reasonable god. He doesn't seek revenge just for revenge's sake, but only to protect his own. We witness his journey as a rageful warrior, an impatient parent, and finally, a wise and righteous god. So what would be the next arc for Kratos? I think this is why the next game in the God of War series is going to take a while, and the reasoning behind splitting Atreus and Kratos' paths in Ragnarok. This makes sure the developer team has enough time to really nail the next game, not only with a great gameplay, art direction, cinematics, and more that we always expect, but with a meaningful story for Kratos. With that being said, I have one possible plot in mind for the next game, regardless of the Pantheon. The story of how an older Kratos and now an adult Atreus reunite years after separating to defend the realms of an unknown threat that will invade it. I don't see Kratos seeking another bloodbath just for the sake of having fun. That's not him anymore. But, as the shrine has foretold, he will now be a revered and beloved god, and I'm sure he will do everything to protect the peace of the Eight Realms and their people. This would bring a new dynamic into the father-son relationship that hasn't been explored yet. Kratos accepting his son is now a grown man and battling side by side as equals, instead as father and son. And perhaps, call me crazy, but this may have been the intention since the introduction of Atreus in God of War 2018, so he can carry the torch of the God of War franchise if Kratos' destiny is to die in the next installment, which I really doubt it will happen unless Sony Santa Monica has a new blockbuster IP in the works and it proves to be a hit. But with the high cost and development time in AAA games, especially the ones done by PlayStation Studios, this might be a once-in-a-generation game for the PS5. Finally, as to which will be the Pantheon Kratos will face next, Sony Santa Monica may have hinted at some of their cards within Ragnarok. The artifact set you can collect at the Lake of the Nine region in Midgard is formed by 6 different items from Tyr's vault: an Ankh from Egypt, a Kila from Vajrayana Buddhism, a Jambinja from ancient Yemen, a Mayan mask, a fertility idol, and a lyre from ancient Greece. From these 6, I would discard the fertility idol because it is tied to the Paleolithic era, thousands of years before the events in the game. The Greek Pantheon, even after its heavy casualties in the previous God of War games, has some major and minor gods that remain standing, but I think this would be a step back in the franchise. As for the Vajrayana Buddhism and the ancient Yemen, I don't know much about either religion, but given that both are still present nowadays, I doubt they're going to mess with them and get into a possible controversy. That would leave us with 2 different options: ancient Egypt and the Mayans. As a proud Mexican, I'm going to tell you, the Mayan mythology and its pantheon would blow your head off, but I think the most popular option would be to go with the Egyptian pantheon. There's a long history of classic movies and even video game franchises that have focused on ancient Egypt, which will make this transition a very easy one to make, commercially speaking. I still don't know how they would justify the huge time gap between civilizations, as the Egyptians are much more ancient than the Norse. But I don't know if we can just use the "this is a video game" card and forget about the pesky dates. A final possibility would be for them to just select any other pantheon outside the 6 that are shown in the artifact set, but even then, there's a big elephant in the room that we haven't talked about yet, and that is Tyr. The Norse god of war is found alive during the endgame of Ragnarok inside a prison in Niflheim. If we remember correctly, Tyr used to travel and visit other cultures, basically having the role of an ancient diplomat between these lands. I'm sure Tyr will be a good counselor for Kratos, and I'm even more confident that he wouldn't approve of any hostility against these lands he has visited, unless the risk for the Eight Realms is imminent and unavoidable. Or perhaps the next threat is something else, something we haven't even thought about or even met. An arcane mystery that may be unveiled soon and will put Kratos and his allies to the test one last time. I hope you liked this video. I really had a great time putting it all together, and I'm planning on doing a couple more for God of War Ragnarok in the future. So be sure to subscribe to that, or if you really love my work, consider supporting me via Patreon for free day early access to any video that I publish here in the channel and some other cool perks. But for now, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you later on the B-side.